Does he remember that day? If only he remembered, he would be grateful that he was able to live through all that pain. A man with blonde hair gets in the way of the squad. In the same second, an unknown force rips every person in the group into small pieces. People in motorcycle helmets walk around among the corpses and debris of the building. They are clearly looking for someone or something. Approaching the blonde man, calling him Mr. Bubby, one of the men informs him that they have been unable to find the money. Before he could finish his sentence, the poor man's head burst open like a watermelon. The blonde man advised the others to do their best, or else they were dead. Amidst the ruins of a building, a man sits on his last breath, with his arm torn off and impaled by a metal rebar. He activates a special top-class skill. The system alerts the person that they will be sent back in time. As the man squirms in unbearable pain, the system warns that all his abilities will be cancelled. The man is then asked to choose the date of the move. He chooses February 28, 1985, the date of his birth. It moves into the embryo's body just as it is being delivered. His mother is having a hard time, something went wrong. The pain is unbearable for the child. It feels like his head is about to explode, but then he decides to fight. Otherwise the mother will be in danger. The delivery was successful and without any consequences for the baby. The system reports to the newborn that the achievement overcoming difficulties has been obtained. The skill person who overcomes difficulties has been obtained. The skill that made the first evil the strongest. It is an intimidating skill that can change the course of events even if the wielder is unconscious. The system then announced the start of the quest, Getting Healthy. Part 1. The quest ended as soon as the baby was fed. Vitals and intelligence increased by 1 level. A new quest began. For these simple tasks, the guy was given very generous rewards, which amazed him greatly. So the man who overcomes difficulties was not the only reason why the first evil was so strong. 8 evils and 8 virtues. These were the 16 S-class awakened ones who were dubbed the strongest. Those 8 who were faithful to the system were dubbed virtuous. The 8 who went against the system were labeled evil. Despite the fact that they had different names, they were not very different from each other. After all, they only pursued their own personal interests. The guy recalls that he and other people fought them because they appropriated many objects and dungeons with their superior strength. However, people to the 16 chosen ones were no more than mosquitoes annoying an elephant. The strongest of them was the first evil. While the other awakened ones were doubting their strength, he was already at the peak of his powers. It would never have occurred to him that there would ever be another awakened like him. Thanks to him revealing his embryo memories to everyone, the protagonist had traveled to this very time. After a few futile attempts, the toddler was still able to utter a couple of important words. Status window. I did it. A status window opened in front of the guy, making it clear that his name was Jeonsaengja. He was given a reward for being able to summon the status window at such an early age. Senku became the first awakened person in history. For that, he received a challenger box. It was the most he could ever hope for. The challenger box is a top-ranked box that gave the young man a chance to travel back in time. The guy decides to open it again. He gets the skill Odin's Wrath from the box. Odin's Wrath is the special skill of the 6th benefactor. Senku still can't forget that day. The 6th benefactor used this skill to wipe out half of his fellow soldiers without blinking an eye. Senku had just obtained a powerful divine rank skill. Finally, he could finally fight them. But before the day began, he must prepare everything he needs. The only reason he went back in time was to protect every last one of them, no matter what it cost him. From Senku's recollection, he is walking down a busy city street and talking on the phone. The caller praises the guy for being savvy in their business. As soon as the colleague is about to invite the young man to tea, the connection is abruptly cut off. While Senku is trying to figure out the reason for this sudden dumping of the tube, people on the street start running away from something and something lands nearby. Blood splatters the young man's face. The fallen bloody body of the woman lies a few centimeters away from the young man. The guy's eyes filled with fear. While he was trying to realize what was happening, a monster appeared behind him, chopping people left and right. The loudspeaker informs citizens that this is not a drill. Unidentified creatures are attacking people. Those on the street are asked to take shelter immediately. A window appears in front of the fleeing Senku. The system tells the guy to enter the test site. Immediately after the system is alerted, the bodies of the young man and several other people on the street begin to disintegrate into small particles. It was the day of beginnings. Monsters infiltrate the human world from those dimensional holes. The selected awakened ones were sent to a testing facility. Some spent months there, some decades. The returning awakened ones didn't even have a chance to catch their breath before that bloody battle. The hopeless situation forced mankind to use its strongest weapon, the nuclear bomb. However, they still failed. Civilization had come to an end. The 8 evils and 8 benefactors used their powers solely for their own benefit. Senku sits in the body of a newborn baby and watches television. The box broadcasts the 23rd Olympic Games in Los Angeles. The USSR and the Eastern European bloc are not participating. The guy immediately remembers that there was a Cold War going on between the USSR and the US at the time. Bunch of idiots. A useless conflict that everyone will forget about in a couple of years. They approach the boy and squeeze him, laughing at the fact that he looks like he understands everything. Yes, they're both alive now. But it won't be long before the irreversible happens. There's no time to lose. When the whole family was asleep, Senku got up from the futon and tried to walk a little. Even though it didn't work the first time, he still managed to take 10 steps in a row. These actions marked the end of the Become Healthy quest chain. The vitals increased again. 20 points were gained. The reward for completing the chain of challenges was a bronze box. This is insane. A bronze box that Senku could only get after suffering for a long time in the dungeons. The rewards of growing up are insane. It makes everything so much easier. First evil if things continue at this rate. Senku will definitely kill this guy before the day of beginnings. If this guy is just allowed to continue to develop, he'll be another disaster for mankind. After a while the kid was sitting outside breathing fresh air, the system alerted again to the start of a new quest, Human Life. Part 5. The conditions were not that difficult. One had to pick a target and talk to him using 10 or more sentences. However, who could he talk to? If a baby born only a few months ago suddenly spoke coherent speech, it would be something out of the realm of fiction. The kid looked at the calendar and noticed that Chuseok, the Korean Thanksgiving, was coming up. At this party, a child meets a girl named Jia. Jia is 4 years old and should already be talking well at this age. Back in Senku's past, Jia was a cutie. When she passed the bar exam, she was at the peak of her beauty. The girl who was the pride of the family on her mother's side was also missing on the day of beginnings. The girl ran up to the baby and hugged him and said hello. A quiet "Hi, Gi" came in response. The boy asked the girl to be quiet and explained that he could only talk to her. After that, the baby asked her to keep everything a secret. They chatted some more, after which the system notified Senku that the Human Life quest chain had been completed. All currently available tutorial quests had been completed. Was this just a tutorial? The system reported that there are no more mandatory quests, and there is an option to skip the remaining quests. The child is then asked to skip the infancy and toddler training. Yes, he would like to spend more time with his parents, but he might accidentally surprise or even scare someone. So Senku decides to skip his studies. He will find something to do in the future. He must prepare for the day of beginnings. 12 years have passed. 1997. A bald man swings a wooden bat and prepares to strike with it. The guy who was the target of this attack dodges and runs around the attacker from the side and delivers a powerful fist punch to the liver of his opponent. Then, before the big guy can recover from the damage he's taken, the hooded guy gets into a stance and delivers a lightning-fast fist punch straight into his opponent's face. The opponent falls unconscious and the crowd watching the fight cheers. One man in the crowd says in surprise, "Damn, that son of a bitch won again. Now he's even taken over Mapo's neighborhood." And that's considering the fact that the fat one had a gun. The man then walks up to the young man and congratulatingly says that the guy is now the real boss of Seoul. Waving away the pestering man's hand, the hooded man explains that he's not interested in any of this. He just wants a stronger opponent. In turn, the man explains that although it is too late to say it, the young man was not made for this. With his skills, he could go into professional sports. What happens if he gets seriously hurt in one of these street fights? An angry Senku warns the man that he will not repeat himself. If a man cannot find him a worthy opponent, he will find one who can. In Senku's status window, the stats indicate that he has the body of an adult male. His strength and intelligence are higher than most professional athletes. However, none of the stats are higher than F rank. Also, due to the fact that he is awakened, the wounds on his body heal much faster than normal people. Senku's physical characteristics were average, but now he had grown to 180 centimeters. The characteristics he improved during his training affected the period he missed. His physical stats are incredible for a 14-year-old, but he still can't even pass the testing ground. Since there will be no more quests, he has to go to dungeons to level up. Guy had already thought of a place on a small mountain in Hwaseong City, Gyeonggi-do Province. There is an F-rank dungeon there. The young man has a lot of preparations to make to go to the dungeon. He has to buy a mountain and fence it off from outsiders. He also has to prepare protective walls in case the monster escapes from the dungeon. Now, a site like this would cost about $1.3 million. Including the security walls, he's going to need a lot of money. That's not all. Dungeons are hidden all over the world. In order to take sole possession of all the dungeons, it will take an incredible amount of effort. Moreover, Senku should be one step ahead. Since he knows the future, it won't be hard to make money. He can make a fortune in the blink of an eye. But don't get cocky because the kid's a minor. He needs a trusted confidant. A young teacher interrupts his musings by putting her hand in front of the young man's face. The girl asks the young man to focus on his studies and asks him what he is thinking about. The young man apologizes to his teacher. He can't focus on his middle school classes right now. While in class, Senku once again delves into his memories. He is sitting impaled by two spears. Two men from his squad impaled the guy with their spears. They ask the captain not to hold a grudge. After all, he would have done the same thing if he had been in their shoes. Grasping the spears with his hands, Senku smiled and agreed with them. He was sure the boys were just following their instincts. The traitors' faces immediately fill with horror. Before they could answer the former captain, the two men were reduced to ashes. It turns out that by picking up the sticks, the guy activated a special skill with which he sizzled the enemies. Sons of bitches. They go crazy once they see the box, said a doomed Senku quietly. A voice came from the depths of the cave. Was that the mark of destruction? The long-haired man stepped closer to the young man, expressing his joy at not being within range of the skill. Realizing that Jonathan was in cahoots with the two, the guy asked the one if he was really with them. Relaxed son, Jonathan said with a smirk, then activated his special skill and began treating Senku. The long-haired man used the mark of cure on the young man, then, announcing that it was time to pay his debts, he said that he had now repaid his debt from last time. With a sigh of relief, Senku told Jonathan with surprise that he had not expected there was still room for compassion in this godless world. Coming back from the dungeon, the long-haired man tells the boy that he has heard that he also worked on Wall Street. He then asks the young man if he remembers the financial market of the 97th. Senku explains to Jonathan that there was an Asian financial crisis in his country at the time. He was young, but he will never forget it. The forgetful partner only at this point remembered that the guy was from Korea. Jonathan was a trader who peaked his career in Hong Kong during the Asian financial crisis. Although it's hard to believe with his current state of. At the time, the man was even more ferocious in some ways. They called him the Wolf of Wall Street. Jonathan finds no point in being an awakened A-ranga. He misses the days when money was everything. He was able to reach A-rang to the envy of everyone. But he still looked like he was really longing for the old days. The man who can be a proxy is Jonathan. He is 25 now. So he must work on Wall Street. He often mentioned the Wall Street Wolf in his stories because the company he worked for had the word wolf in its name. That information should be enough to find him. Senku started looking for Wall Street financial companies with the word wolf in their names. Soon the guy found what he was looking for. His face is unburdened by despair and suffering, but Senku recognized him immediately. In the information the young man found, in addition to a photograph, there was Jonathan's email. The guy wrote a message to the man that read, "Nice to meet you, Jonathan. I would like to hear your opinion on whether the Thai bot is overvalued." Senku is confident that Jonathan will definitely respond to this letter. In 1997, Jonathan was thinking that hedge funds, investment funds that use larger accounts with fewer owners to maximize returns, were planning to crash the Thai baht, but he wasn't entirely sure. If he starts making ambitious investments with the information that Sanko has, the rumors of his success will become something more. After a while, Jonathan replied to the guy that the Thai baht was not overvalued. "That's it. Don't pretend you don't know anything," the young man said in a low voice and started typing his reply. In the email, Sanhu apologized for the misunderstanding. By reevaluating the Thai baht, he meant that someone could capitalize on it. That's when it all started. Jonathan responded as quickly as if he had been waiting for answers. In his reply letter, Jonathan asked the stranger to tell him who he was and who he worked for. Sanko knew he would be interested. Then the young man began to text nonstop, trying to get Jonathan's attention even more. There are many reasons why the Thai baht can be used by utopians for their own benefit. Asia's foreign exchange reserves and a stable high dollar make the baht an easy target for hedge funds. I think the Thai baht will collapse this month. But Thailand is not their ultimate target. Thailand is just the beginning. Jonathan can't believe his eyes. Thailand is just the beginning. Wall Street really is in chaos right now. Could that mean he's part of this takeover? Jonathan wondered. Who was he? Or should he ask who they were? It could be a test. My office is open anytime. I'll be expecting you. If you are unable to come to my office, here is my contact information, replied the man in the email. This was exactly the kind of response Sanko had expected from Jonathan. Jonathan wondered why this stranger was acting as if he knew all the answers and was waiting for him to understand too. The man has excellent ideas, but he doesn't know where to go. Sanko bets Jonathan can't get past this. Soon enough there will be a declaration of war on the financial market. April 1997, hedge funds attack on the Thai baht begins. 1992, the pound sterling managed to collapse in 50 days. Due to these events, Wall Street predicted the Thai baht would fall in the next 50 days. However, contrary to all expectations, the Thai baht did not fall so easily. On the contrary, it has not given up its position and has even seriously shaken up hedge funds. It lasted about 3 months. Eventually, Thailand fell. On the 2nd of July, after conducting the baht attack, Jonathan sent more than a dozen emails asking people to contact him. All of his emails were about how he was up betting that the Thai baht would collapse in May. Well, that was expected. After a long time, Sanko replies to Jonathan with a new message. There he asked to be contacted if Jonathan had received investment income from a bet on the growth of the baht. He'll probably wonder what it all means. The answer won't be long in coming. After Jonathan's response, the guy sends a new message suggesting that the man should start working for himself and start his own brokerage company, and Sanko himself will make him an investment plan. However, what the stranger wrote to Jonathan after the previous message was incredibly shocking. The message asked for 51% of the company's income as compensation. What the hell is going on here? This lunatic is betting on the Thai baht to rise. Come to think of it, he is the one who said that the baht is exactly planned to collapse. He didn't say whether the hedge funds would win or not, but the attack has already begun, and there is nothing Thailand can do to counter it. Even the UK in 1992 with their fantastic economy couldn't stop them. Betting on the growth of the baht just doesn't make any sense. Those investments Jonathan was sending could only be supplied by VIPs personas even more important than VIPs, but the rise of the baht. What's more, a stranger demands 51% of the profits for an investment plan like this. As he exhaled, Jonathan mistakenly realized one disappointing truth. He had just been duped by a con man. Humbled, the man decides to just forget about this stranger and contact other VIPs. However, curiosity got the better of Jonathan. He hung up the phone and decided to ask one last question. In his reply letter, he asks the stranger how he came to the conclusion that hedge funds will lose. But it's as if the person on the other side of the screen was waiting for that question. At the same second, a reply comes back saying that Jonathan seems to have misunderstood something. After all, the stranger never once said that the hedge funds would lose. One by one, the messages began to arrive in Jonathan's email. The man stared at the monitor with bated breath. Understand, Thai banks have many ways to protect themselves in May. Bilateral agreements, dual rate system and so on. Thailand has a couple more trump cards up its sleeve. My point is that the Thai baht will just rise for a short period, not beat. Jonathan immediately realized all the possibilities this situation could present, accidentally spilling coffee on himself. All Wall Street is betting right now is that the baht will fall. They are confident of this and are using this as an opportunity to get closer to VIP. Is it possible that someone else knows about the growth of the baht? No, even if they do, Jonathan decides to give it a try. Jonathan's boss can't believe what he's just heard, but is going to grow up. He calls the man crazy and throws the report papers in his face. These greedy hedge funds are doing everything to bring down the baht, and Jonathan suddenly thinks Thailand can protect itself. The fat man offers Jonathan things right now if he's going to continue to keep screwing around. He's afraid that soon there might be a rumor about an idiot working at their company. And annoyed, Jonathan doesn't realize what he was thinking. He knew this was what was going to happen. As he arrives at his workplace, he informs the guy that there is no point in betting on the growth of the baht. Unfortunately, their Wolf Corporation is not going to work with something like this. Sanku reminds the man that a little earlier he had offered Jonathan a job to work for himself. Who does that bastard think he is? Giving him 51% of the profits is the same as letting him control his finances in the future. Who would agree to that kind of contact? When Sanku advises the man to think hard before the end of May, Jonathan offers to meet and discuss it in person at his office. Then the guy stopped responding to his messages again, which made Jonathan very angry. All the coworkers mock Jonathan. He's the only one who didn't profit from the fall of the baht. People in the company look down on him. End of May. News channels and newspapers are bursting with morning headlines. The ASEAN Central Bank has signed a bilateral agreement. Thailand receives $12 billion in aid. It's a nightmare on Wall Street. The Thai baht is rising. Everyone's going crazy. They're going to lose at least $300 million. The only person who predicted the rise of the baht and lost nothing on the matter was Jonathan. Remembering all those correspondences, Jonathan realizes everything. That's right, he was really right. A colleague standing behind him informs the man that he is being summoned by the boss of the company. After a while, the boss is already introducing Jonathan Hunter as the pride of Wolf Corporation. He will introduce a new prominent VIP worker, furious over the rise of the baht, while remaining unaffected himself. But that's what he thinks and wants. Jonathan rips off his company name tag and places it on the table in front of VIP. Field then announces that he is leaving Wolf Corporation as of today and starting his own brokerage company. When luring VIP, he remarks that he is not going to change his number, so they can contact him at any time. When the boss tries to contradict the man, he interrupts him, reminding him of how the fat man recently told him to get out. Jonathan just does what the boss wants him to do. The fat man asks the man if he has a sponsor. Jonathan replies that he will soon. The fact that he is the only one who has been able to avoid disaster is already known to all of Wall Street. When his former boss starts to turn to insults and tells the man that he won't always be so lucky, Jonathan replies that no one knows what will happen next. And has Wall Street ever needed such lucky men? Jonathan packs his bags with peace of mind and writes to Sanku about quitting his job. He accepts his crazy decision, after which he clarifies where he should come. Sanku, who was doing his usual strength exercises, hears the sound of a message being sent. He jumps up abruptly and looks at the email. After reading everything Jonathan sent him, the guy sends a short message. Got it. Come to Seoul right now. Sanku didn't really miss those times in middle school, though he was glad to see his friends again. However, now everyone thinks he's weird. He doesn't look like a middle school student. The guy looks like he's been suspended 5 times. Sanku is even relieved that they aren't getting any closer to him. The bell rang for class. All the students immediately scattered to their classes. The corridor, which instantly emptied out, brought back memories that Sanku so assiduously wanted to erase. That horrible scene, no one survived. Sanku, who was standing alone, was noticed by the teacher. The girl didn't notice the tears welling up in her eyes. Seoul International Airport. A passenger airplane arrives at the runway. Sanku stands with a sign that reads Jonathan H. Welcome, waiting for his American guest. As soon as Jonathan came into the boy's field of vision, he noticed that the long-haired man was dressed as he had been the last time they had met, and with a mace in his hands. Not believing his eyes, the young man shook his head and tried to come to his senses. No, he was just imagining things. In front of Senku stood the same Jonathan, the broker. The man approached the boy and introduced himself and said hello. The young man also greeted the guest and offered to go somewhere else. As they walked, they thought about their own things. Senku was not used to seeing Jonathan looking so neat, even though he had tried to get used to his partner's new appearance by looking at his pictures. Jonathan was surprised at how well the young man spoke English. Taking a seat at the table and looking around with a smile, the man asked the boy when that mysterious stranger was coming. The man also told him that the stranger had a very unusual way of communicating in letters. But what Jonathan heard next shocked him. "I've been sending those messages, Jonathan," Senku pronounced. He thanked the man for coming and then waited for a response. Such a statement made Jonathan very angry. How old is this guy? 19, 20. He dropped everything and came here for this. With anger in his eyes, the man asked Senku if he realized what he had done. Looking at the angry look in his former partner's eyes, he felt that he had met the real Jonathan. He wondered aloud if Wall Street judged by age. And then, offering an alternative option, the boy suggested to Jonathan that if he was not satisfied with something, he could fly back. However, before leaving, the young man gives something to his guest. Standing up from his chair, furiously grabbing the papers from Sanhu's hands, Jonathan asked what the hell it was. When Jonathan read what was written in the papers, he was stunned. Senku asked the man to sit down and listen to what he was about to tell him. Didn't the Asian financial crisis predict the moment when the US government would provide them with unlimited dollars? This means that the 21st century will be a golden milestone in Asia's history. All the hedge funds had done was to put in a teaspoonful of money. Senku finished his monologue and asked Jonathan what he thought of his report. After summarizing everything he's read, Jonathan realizes that the guy thinks that, as it were, Thailand will fall. In response, the young man asked a perfectly reasonable question about what Jonathan had been thinking before he read the report. He won't be able to answer that easily. That's the situation on Wall Street. In 1992, it all started after hedge funds got a bang from the Thai government. No one could have predicted this outcome of a battle in a war that was thought to be already won. However, contrary to all expectations, on July 2, the Thai government declared surrender. That's how they prevailed in the end. But this report left out an important detail. After explaining all this, Jonathan waited for the young man's answer. "It's not for me to answer that, Jonathan," Senku explained, and looking into the man's eyes added, "You have to answer me yourself, whether you have the right to work with me or not." When Jonathan heard this answer, he realized that the boy would not tell him anything until he had signed the contract. He would make it worse for himself if he underestimated the young man because of his age. After sitting down and calming down, the man explains to Senku about having everything with him, money and documents. He will definitely not be without a job. Then with a smirk he asks the guy what he has. Convincing his interlocutor, the young man says the opportunity is worth it, and even more so. What would have happened to Jonathan if Senku had picked someone else in March? He would have lost all his savings betting on the fall of the Thai baht. Even now, talking to the man, Senku is losing money he could have made. Puzzled, Jonathan asks the young man for time to think. He doesn't trust the boy completely. After all, he is too unpredictable. Unsatisfied with this answer, Senku gets up from the table and agrees to wait, but only until the 3rd of June. The American guest sincerely does not understand why there is such a hurry. After all, the 3rd of June is just around the corner. However, looking at the graph in the report the guy gave him, the man notices something. Last time in 1992, the right period on the chart was at the July 2 mark. Senku explains to his uncomprehending colleague that now all that remains is to calculate how much they will lose in the remaining few days. Just because you can predict a trend doesn't mean you can predict a date. Unless you're a god, Jonathan shouted after him. "Well, please love and pity, God," the guy replied and headed for the exit. The man was amazed that this kid knew not only the approximate time, but also the exact date. That's impossible. As he left, Sanko reminded Jonathan that he had until June 3rd. But if the man fails to make up his mind by then, it's over between them. If this is the Jonathan the guy knows, he'll make the right choice. The next day, Sanko gets a new email. In it, Jonathan asks a guy for advice on what he should name his company. Sanko asks his partner if he regrets his choice. Jonathan's face literally said what he thought about the situation. However, it is too late to think how true and valuable that report was. The man can understand how the young man predetermined the fall, but how does he know the exact date? Not wanting to give away his secret, the guy replies that it's all thanks to the calculations. Not satisfied with the answer, Jonathan asks the boy to forget about it. He has no more doubts. The man asks Sanko if he will continue to fill him in on his plans. The boy replies that he will tell him about some tricks. Jonathan has no choice but to trust the young man. From that moment on, he believes everything Sanko does. The man asks the young man to give his name, so that he knows the name of his business partner. The boy introduces himself as Sanhu. Sunhu. Jonathan didn't fully hear the name, but he liked it. In that case, he suggests naming their company Jonathan and Son Investment. The guy didn't like that suggestion. He doesn't want his name mentioned in the title. Perplexed, Jonathan agrees, and then tells his partner that he has $400,000 in funds to get them started. His entire capital is valued at $400,000. And he's going to give Sanko 51% of that. This man is definitely out of his mind. After inquiring, Jonathan asks the guy if he has any money to add to the amount. The young man replies that if he had the money, he would not have called his partner to Korea. The man then asks the obvious question as to why Sanko chose him then. How did he know about him? The guy replied that he was on the Wolf Corporation website. His identity wasn't that important. Hearing this, Jonathan breathed a sigh of relief. Then out of Jonathan's mouth comes a phrase that Sanko had heard before. The paths are inexplicable. Luck will never catch up with you if you count on it alone. If she's the only one you're counting on, that's right, he's said that before. At that time, Jonathan was originally going to save up his points until he could open the challenger box. But instead, he decided to spend all of his points to open the master box because he was going to sell off all the items in the master's box and end his life indulging in carnal pleasures. However, he had obtained a powerful skill that could only be knocked out of the challenger's box. Getting a highly ranked item in the box is a true miracle. However, it was a miracle still. It was in the hands of someone who had already given up. Despite Sanko's best efforts to dissuade him, Jonathan decided to seek revenge. This was his last memory of Jonathan. A while later, the boy learned of his death. "Why are you looking at me like that?" With those words, Jonathan interrupts the boy from his musings. Was he really so moved that the man called him an opportunity? The young man is actually his opportunity. And that will be enough, sunshine, the man adds. Taking the papers out of the briefcase, he asks the lad to give him his divine calculations. Then Sanko asks the final question. Will Jonathan follow him without further question, even if he asks him to bet everything on the line? The man says yes without a second thought. He has already bet everything on this young man. Now sign these papers. The guy holds out the contract to Jonathan. Taking the papers in his hands and reading them carefully, the man notices the first 6 digits in the Korean equivalent of a 10, which must mean Sanko's date of birth. 12 years old, Jonathan shrieked in surprise, looking at the boy sitting across from him. With a smirk, Sanko asked his partner to stop surprising him, suggesting they think about their business. Second week of June, the 9th through the 13th, Sanko is confident that the market will drop 10% during this period. Does that mean Thailand will raise the white flag this week? No, they will surrender a little later. Jonathan asks his partner why he is targeting the second week of June. A guy asks a man if he remembers what he said earlier. Thailand is just the beginning. When the Thai market falls 10%, chaos will reign throughout Asia. Many will support the hedge fund's attack on the baht, and their ultimate goal will be. Jonathan, with passion in his eyes, decides to assume Hong Kong is next. But he's wrong, Korea is next. What are you talking about, sunshine? Foreign foundations can't enter Korea without permission, Jonathan explains to the guy in surprise. That's right, they can't shake Korea and the foreign exchange market. The culprit is not hedge fund money. The fear that will spread through East Asia is the real culprit. Foreign funds will leave Korea. There's a real wave coming. Will Senku try to stop it? Is it because of his patriotism? Jonathan explains to the young man that no matter how brilliant he is, this wave is beyond anyone's control. But the boy has known this for a long time. He explains that money is his only goal. The economic war will be fought by an alliance of hedge funds, but when it's over, they will realize who really benefited from this war. Jonathan, we'll make a bet with 50 times leverage, Senku informs his partner with confidence. This statement shocked Jonathan. It meant that the risk of losing everything would be 50 times greater. Even if the downgrade is 10%, the chart will not fall in a straight line to the minus 10% mark. It will rise 2%. Fall 3%, and so on, loosening up and down, until there is a certain dissonance and then promptly collapse afterward. Therefore, the greater the leverage, the more important trading skills are. If the leverage is 50 times, a 1% drop for them becomes a 50% drop. In turn, a 2% drop turns into a 100% drop. In other words, since they are betting on the Thai baht falling, it will mean a profit of $400,000 for them. That's right. Senku's going to pour his entire fortune into it. All $400,000 with 50 times leverage. All ups and downs will be multiplied by 50. It's a huge risk. It's like trading $20 million instead of $400,000. However, the Jonathan that Senku knew had only reached his prime because of his trading skills sometime in October, when the hedge fund alliance got a serious bang for its buck in Hong Kong. As long as a man trusts him, the results will be unimaginable. The boy writes a letter to Jonathan asking him not to doubt him. The young man expects good news from his partner. They must do this to prepare for the next war. There's only 1 week left from the 9th to the 13th. If the bot drops 10%, they'll get $2 million. It's in your hands, Jonathan. In hysterics, sitting alone, Jonathan screams, "All right, you crazy boy, I'll show you what the great Jonathan can do." Seoul International Airport. A passenger airplane arrives on the runway. The scene from Jonathan and Senku's first meeting is back in front of us. A long-haired man in leather armor and a mace is dragging a huge dead monster by the scruff of his neck. Of course, the eyes deceive the kid again. This time, however, Jonathan brought a far more valuable winnings than mana crystals from an S-rank monster. 700, the man muttered as he approached the young man. Walking up to the guy, Jonathan can't look his partner in the eye for a long time. But when the man dares to look at Senku's face, tears come to his eyes. Taking in a breath of air, he cries out, 700 times the result, sunshine. 700 times $400,000. We've raised $280 million in the last week. We're geniuses. Senku calls his mom and warns her that he will be spending the night tonight at his non-existent friend's house. When he hangs up the phone, he sighs with relief. Then the guy starts looking at the reports his partner sent him. 70,000% net profit. Jonathan did even better than he expected. Still, this risky trading was worth it. While the young man was going through the papers, Jonathan was going crazy behind him. He couldn't believe that they had managed to pull this off. From dirt to dukes the first time, they became a leading hedge fund with just 2 people. Since the man was not going to sleep, Senku suggested that they discuss what they were going to do next. Jonathan asked the man with interest what unimaginable information he was going to give out this time. But Young suggested imagining that Thailand would try to implement a floating exchange rate system, taking that day as a day of attack. They will put all their savings at maximum leverage. This time, no jumps will follow during the currency collapse. It's a one-way fall. No one will buy the fallen currency. Everyone will wait for it to hit its low. But Thailand's sudden action will instantly crash the market rate. Obviously, the implementation of a floating exchange rate system could also be a declaration of surrender, a voluntary acceptance of defeat in this war. Senku asks his partner how much he thinks they will make from $200 million. The man is literally stunned by this statement. Bet the whole $200 million. Does this guy really think the hedge fund alliance is just going to watch it? If they put $200 million on a bot drop with maximum leverage. Turning around, Senku reminded him that the hedge funds would be the ones to wage war. If the young man got the day of the attack wrong, they would lose everything. Jonathan cried out that such a large bet without a risk control strategy was just crazy. He accused the guy of not being able to pull something like that off unless he was a god. Turning around and looking at his partner. With his gaze, Senku seemed to recall what he had said recently. Please love and pity, God. Putting his hand on Jonathan's shoulder. The guy told him what data to start collecting the next day. We need to check what percentage of Thailand's foreign exchange reserve they bid off, making 280 million. The man explains that this data is not easy to obtain, and even more so, is it possible to make any calculations with them? Turning around to his partner, Senku asks why he thinks the guy called it a bet, and at 200 million, rather than the 280 million they earned. The remaining 80 million would be enough to sign a contract with the head of the Bank of Thailand. That's why he instructs Jonathan to go to Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. The man looks at the boy with horror. Is he really 12 years old? He expresses his displeasure to the young man. After all, just one mistake and he is a dead man. Senku explains that Thailand knows that defeat is inevitable. They will use it to calculate the consequences. 1997 will be their starting point. Turning around and leaning against the wall, the guy pronounces, Jonathan, let's put everything. The next day Jonathan seemed very anxious, his gaze the look of an awakened man treading the dungeon. While Jonathan is mining for information in the heart of enemy territory, Senku decides to get down to business as well. The impact breaks the arm at the wrist, the knife flies out and falls to the ground. As the attacker, lying on the ground, squirms in pain, the man tries to restrain Senku. The boy explains to his opponent that he should not have pulled out the knife if he was not prepared for the consequences. However, the person behind him tries to dissuade him anyway. This guy's worse than a stubborn bull. Rumor has it he's even got some gang ties. The man kneeling in front of the young man is surprised that he knows so much about him. He warns the boy that he will not leave him alone and will not just forget about it. Such a statement from the Ambo was clearly to Senku's liking. That same night, the sounds of motorcycle engines were heard somewhere near an abandoned factory. A whole armed gang trapped one hooded kid. All the gang members in that place at that time were greatly surprised at what was happening. Why isn't he running? Did he think he was going to die? Ordinary training is not as effective, and Senku has already realized that. At the same second, men armed with bats and metal pipes pounced on the young man from all sides. With his first swing of his leg, Sanhu smacked one of his attackers in the face, knocking him out instantly. At the same moment, the guy turned around and with his hand striking the bridge of his nose, he sent the second enemy into a knockout. He then dodged a blow from a metal pipe, after which he kicked the attacker in the face with his knee. When a big man with a wooden bat ran up from behind and attacked Senku, the young man ducked and lunged and stunned the Ambo with a palm strike to the face. At the same second, a brick landed on the back of the guy's head. The opposing striker relaxed and threw out a brick, talking about how problematic the bastard was. However, one punch was not enough. Senku takes the enemy by the scruff of the neck and throws him against the concrete floor with all his might. Wiping his face clean of his blood, the guy notices something again. Yeah, that's it. The abilities he sees in a bunch of their attacks. The system seems to be pushing him to use his abilities, but if he uses Odin's wrath here, no good can come of it. In that case, he'll have to fight hand to hand until he reaches his goal. The head of the gang didn't like the sight. Annoyed at having to do everything himself again, he starts the bike and takes off. Speeding up, he drives his motorcycle into Senku's back. The boy flies a few meters away. As he lies there, holding his back and writhing in pain, the gang leader orders his subordinates to finish him off. The defenseless guy is attacked by the remaining gang members he didn't have time to deal with and beaten to a pulp. Out of the crowd of ill-wishers comes the same bulky man whom Senku broke his arm in the fight. The big man wants to strike the final blow. Beaten, lying in blood, Senku wonders why this happened. Wasn't it enough? However, he was not going to give up so easily. Everyone around was stunned when they saw that even after so many blows, the guy was able to get up on his own. But it didn't last long. He sprinted, swung around and kicked with all his might at the jaw of the already exhausted boy. The blow delivered was so powerful it may have been fatal to the guy. System alert. The skill man overcoming difficulties is activated. The thug, who just a short time ago had almost celebrated victory, now stood aghast, looking at the lad. System alert. The skill man overcoming difficulties has been activated. Vitality level has been changed from F to E. Strength level has been changed from F to E. Dexterity level has been changed from F to E. Intelligence level has been changed from F to E. Odin's Wrath level has been changed from F to E. In a panic, the Ambo pulled out the Bowie knife he had used in the previous fight and began waving it around, asking people to stay away from him. Senku was already behind the enemy's back, and the enemy was literally folded in half by the power of the blow to his face. Primary regeneration is complete. You are temporarily immune to pain. This is the man who overcomes difficulties. Senku has a hard time getting used to this sensation due to the sudden increase in characteristics. Seeing what this monster had done to his comrade, the other members immediately pounced on the guy. However, this fight was predetermined before it even started. With a single blow of his fist, one of his attackers flies a dozen meters away, bouncing off the surface several times. Senku immediately approaches the bandit with a wooden stick and holds out his hand. The enemy puts his weapon in it, thus surrendering to the enemy. The guy immediately snatches the stick from his opponent's hand and with a lightning-fast blow, breaks it in half against the poor guy's head. Throwing the remains of the stick out of his hands, the young man notices the motorcycle the gang leader is sitting on and activates Odin's Wrath. Without a single touch, the man flies off the saddle of his bike, and the bike itself ignites. The bike explodes, burning with red flames. People are left lying around. Are you sure he's human? The remaining gang members stare in horror at the departing Senku, not daring to touch him. He had gotten what he had started the massacre for. The overcoming man skill is not activated by harming yourself. It activates after taking damage from enemies and only when it is no longer possible to fight. Senku still needs to get used to it, but it's a really useful skill. It is his weapon against the monsters, the 8 evils, and the 8 benefactors after the day of beginnings. While Senku was swinging his fists through the air, he got a phone call. The guy was told that someone was requesting a call from overseas. The familiar "Hey Sunshine" came from the phone. It was Jonathan calling from Thailand. The partner praises Senku. He was indeed right. They acted like they were just waiting for them. The man luckily managed to get out of there alive. He found out that the amount they had managed to earn was just above 20%. That's close. By close, he did not mean Thailand's current situation. He meant that Thailand still had a much larger foreign exchange reserve than had been anticipated. Therefore, he could not be sure whether the funds would win the war. The guy reminded Jonathan that they had already decided to bet everything and asked if he had any objections. The partner said he'd already agreed when he'd spent 80 million to get the papers. Whatever the outcome, what is happening now is just crazy. Jonathan asked the young man when they would attack. July 2nd, the highest leverage rate. A flustered Jonathan won't stop asking Senku about how the hedge funds and Dragon Fund will react. The guy explains that at the end of the day, they are all just ratepayers. When a representative hedge fund like the Dragon Fund makes its move, the rest will follow suit. Reminds me of those squabbles between the 8 benefactors and the world hunters. Once a leader gets to the front of the line, all the factions supporting him will follow and sow confusion. Pied Pipers. What an accurate definition. So if Senku is right, these two will rake in all the investment money in the world. On this one incident alone, when Jonathan starts complaining that his weak heart is about to stop at this rate, Senku encourages him by telling him that he is much stronger than he thinks. His partner needs to stop worrying about nothing and focus on attacking. Attack? Well, you could say that. World's wealth, I'm coming for you, came from the other side of the wire. 1st of July. That's the day Hong Kong joined China. Some say history repeats itself. The modern version of the Opium War is repeating itself in Asia. Western investment funds shove dollars to them instead of opium to weaken their economy, attacked them using their national currency as cannonballs. A civil war broke out in Asia due to the discovery of an S-rank dungeon there. The war was led by one of the 8 benefactors and his followers. This time, however, the war was won by an irritated Senku sat there complaining to himself that there were no pagers at this time, let alone cell phones. Now all he has to do is sit and wait for a letter from Jonathan. The amount of foreign currency they can exchange for the 200 million they have, thanks to maximum leverage, will eventually convert to 10 billion. Even if they bet everything on a fall, the faction against them has to back the bet for the deal to go through. The bot market can't do that. The exchange of bot in the future will be far less than $10 billion a day. Most likely, these two will have no one to exchange with, so they are trying to monopolize tomorrow's collapse. At this point, a letter arrived in the mail. Preparations for the attack are complete. Senku felt as if he was entering a dungeon with a bag full of equipment and provisions. He used to go into dungeons even if he wasn't sure if he could come back alive. Right now, however, he is trembling in anticipation for another reason. He is confident that victory is within his grasp. All their hard-won points will not go to waste. Suddenly, Senku caught himself thinking that he had relaxed a lot. Even though it had been less than a year since his return, it seemed that the past was far behind him. The guy writes Jonathan a message back. It says that he has also prepared everything, and tomorrow they are going to clean up the huge dungeon. This letter is not addressed to Jonathan at all. It's addressed to Senku himself, so he won't forget his true purpose. Senku sits in class and writes a test, glancing at the clock every time. It's noon. There's a 2-hour difference with Thailand. In half an hour, Thailand's central bank will announce the introduction of a floating exchange rate system. That's when it all starts. Judging by what happened in Senku's past life, there will be a guild gathered a group of people betting on Thailand surrendering. There will also be those who bet on Thailand surrendering by mid-July, and, of course, there will be those who bet on Thailand's victory. Tonight, these groups will feel how wrong they were. However, when Senku enters the dispute, few will bet on Thailand's surrender. All that money that the other groups bet on Thailand winning will end up in his hands. The teacher again distracts the boy from his important thoughts. She reminds him that he is looking at his watch, and they are sitting here writing a test. Senku apologizes to the girl and promises to focus on work. Fascinated by this answer, the girl noticed that the boy was talking like an adult. Speaking of which, their class teacher, she's supposed to be the same as she was before Senku's time travel. But the kid doesn't remember her at all. Lunch break. It's 1:30. It's time for action. Senku goes to the class teacher and on the pretext that he is not feeling well, asks to leave early. The teacher is very surprised. It's not the first time. She thinks the boy has made a habit of it, even though he's growing up every time they meet. Taking a look at the test, the girl realizes that Senku took it for 100 points, so that he could leave early. Usually he deliberately makes mistakes to avoid getting the highest score. The teacher realizes that the young man wouldn't do anything wrong by skipping class, and so she lets him go. After thanking her, the boy turns around and goes to leave the classroom. However, the teacher calls out to him. The girl wonders to Senku if he's being abused. It's just that he always walks alone. The guy explains that he has a temper. He likes to be alone. He thinks to himself, why did she ask? Is she following him? Senku feels bad for her. No, that's not important right now. He has other things he needs to deal with right now. They all realize that Senku is not like other children his age. His class teacher who lets him go home without any questions when he asks. His parents, as if they don't notice the cell phone bill. And the guy will soon forget how to use Wi-Fi because of having to unplug his cable internet from his phone and connect to his computer just to get online. He still can't get used to this slow internet. Going online, Senku immediately contacted Jonathan. During the correspondence, it turns out Thailand has already announced the introduction of a floating exchange rate system, but the website with information on foreign currencies is currently frozen, so no one can check market prices. The guy asks his partner how much they have at stake now given this situation. Preliminary calculations pointed to the sum of $10 billion. Jonathan bet on an average of $33 per Thai baht. At the moment, one Thai baht is worth exactly $30. However, due to the current situation, Jonathan has managed to multiply the bet as much as $60 billion. Though Senku had expected it, but to see it all live, the guy was shaken like an alcoholic. Everything will become clear at the very end. More and more people are standing up against the position they have taken. This will only confirm their profits. Concentrating, Sanku reminds Jonathan that it will be up to the young man to decide when and what needs to be approved. The partner need not worry about the resistance their opponents are putting up. Things have changed dramatically after today's announcement. Trading has begun. The currency began to fall rapidly. 29 baht, 28.9 baht, 28.8 baht. The decline won't stop until it's over. The guy asks Jonathan to lock in a profit. In the batter's war, the main force in the hedge fund alliance is the spot market. The futures market is only one of many strategies. Futures markets, which have no guarantee of success, have a supporting role in mitigating the risks of the spot markets. Sanku, on the other hand, puts all his chips in the futures market. 50 times leverage, no less. It's all just crazy and doesn't make sense. But they won the bet and made a huge profit. Now all they have to do is approve everything. Suddenly, Jonathan sends a message. Our approval has made a difference in the marketplace. They reply, Sanku doesn't understand what's going on. This is a deviation from the known story. The bot is rising rapidly. The falling bot has started to sell. What the hell? The bot is rising. $31, $32. $33. The sudden spike in the bot stopped. Everything stabilized and the currency continued to depreciate. The bot is falling again. Their intervention had a negligible effect on the course of history. 80% were successfully confirmed. Jonathan suggested that the remaining 20% be postponed until the date of the deadline. Sanku realizes that his partner doesn't want to leave without potentially more profit, while the bot is falling. However, the guy talks him out of it. The war is over. All that's left is scraps for the hyenas. He asks Jonathan to come back to Korea. The battlefield is about to change. The Thai baht has been crushed and hit a record low. The exchange rate yesterday stood at 30.40 baht per dollar due to the announcement of a floating exchange rate system by Thailand's central bank. The collapse of the baht has sown fear throughout Southeast Asia. A long-haired man, hunched and drooping, dragged heavy luggage behind him. He sat down at the table opposite Sanku and placed the metal case on the table with a clatter. There was a tense silence. Impatiently, Jonathan spoke in a trembling voice. In the process of calculation, expected profits have decreased. That was expected, Sanku replied, looking intently at his partner and the briefcase beside him. So how much is there? Jonathan waved his hand in front of the young man's face. $50 billion. The amount of money mentioned made both of them feel sick and gave them headaches. Jonathan admitted that he didn't even know how he had gotten here. He was so shocked. Not recovering from the shock, Sangu told his partner that they needed to get to work. This is just the beginning of the Asian financial crisis. The guy asked the man to take care of his condition. Malaysia and Indonesia will not participate, but Hong Kong will join soon. As soon as Jonathan heard about Hong Kong, his headache was gone. His eyes lit up as soon as they started talking about the market. Before the discussion, however, Sanku asked the man for one favor. I'll start by saying that there's land in Korea that you and I need to buy, the guy said without hesitation. An unknown force threatens Jonathan. The creature grabs the man in its huge hands. The sun, the man utters with horror. The creature was a man Jonathan knew very well. A man who had given him everything, but who could just as easily take it all away. The man is completely at his mercy and dependent on him. It scares him to death. Jonathan is awakened from his nightmare by a young foreign stewardess. The plane lands in the United States at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Even after getting into a car, the man can't forget the nightmare. He consoles himself that he is just taking it too personally. He recalls the words he had spoken to Sanku. I'll start by saying that there is land in Korea that you and I need to buy. Jonathan asks the kid why he wants to buy land. Does he plan to invest in real estate? The young man replies that real estate is just the beginning. From that point on, they will bet on any market if it makes money. Jonathan is starting to lose his mind. Does that mean $50 billion is just seed money? Sunshine, you and me. Nothing's going to happen to us, right? In response, the guy offers his partner some snacks. He's too tense. During lunch, Sangu explains the future plan of action. They will share the company. Jonathan asks the guy how many companies he has in mind. The young man replies that the more complex the structure, the better. Then no one will be able to trace the original owner. The system should be such that the employees of their company don't even realize who they are dealing with. The man guessed what Senku wanted to do. He proposes to set up 100 paper and shadow companies. This could be considered criminal activity. Then the guy reminds his partner how hard it was for him to work alone, going from country to country. Before Hong Kong, you should have prepared your team. Skills don't matter. What matters is loyalty and trust. Hearing this phrase, Jonathan said with a smirk that he had a couple of ideas. He has a lot of friends from his past jobs that he would like to involve. After a successful operation in Hong Kong, they will buy a couple of mid-sized investment funds, like Wolf Corporation, where Jonathan worked. On top of that, the guy had his partner round up the best experts, someone like Jeffrey K., the company hunter. Such people will use their funds, but they will not be privy to the inner workings of their company. When the separation is complete, Senku plans to name one of them Jonal and send him to Korea. He will use it to shop here on his own behalf. When Jonathan asked him why he had chosen that name, the young man replied that Jonal was his father's name. They should be focusing on work right now. They don't have time to drink money right now. There will be a time when all the money in the world will be in our hands, don't you agree? That's right. Now we must continue to conquer the summits. Jonathan Investment. That will be the name of our company. You can take the glory, Jonathan. You can think of it as compensation for using your name and appropriating a little more stock. How much longer are you guys gonna stand there with those dumbfounded faces? You guys finally made it to the big leagues. Welcome to Jonathan Investment. There's a monster called the Ant of the Abyss. These creatures travel in armies of several hundred individuals, mercilessly destroying everything in their path. They're always hungry. Hedge funds and their backers are a carbon copy of these ants. They have swarmed across Southeast Asia. However, the money meant for them ended up in Senku's pockets. It looks as if the story has changed and become much more sinister. They must have latched on to the young man and his partner. Think about it. The usual group monopolized the fall of the bat on the 1st of July and skimmed off all the cream. Suddenly the guy was called by his new nickname by a man nearby. Senku is now known to everyone as President Kim among his own, and Manager Kim to outsiders. When he approached, Senku asked if there had been any changes in the terms of the contract. The man in the green jacket said that Chairman Choi had said he agreed to the terms. He has his own building in Gangnam, so he can probably be trusted. The friendly man remarked that he felt envious when he saw a boy working in big business at such a young age. He then asked President Kim to follow him. Senku had a condition for leasing office space, a 2-year contract in exchange for everything to be paid in clean money. But his name wouldn't be on the checks. It's all probably illegal, but it's an absolute win for her and Jonathan, as all the money will go into President Choi's bribery fund. The man in the green jacket opens the door and shows the boy his new room. Everything had been cleaned out, and all that was left was to get things started. All in all, Senku had only one reason to rent this office: data security. That's all. At the same time, the guy finally managed to get himself an APLS modem. He's finally free of old-fashioned modems. Turning to the man behind him, President Kim said that he would deposit the rent money for this office now, and if the workers bring in the 2 boxes standing in the hallway, he would even give without change. While the boy is looking at the new modem with tears of happiness in his eyes, the man in the green jacket thanks the president, adding that if he needs anything, he should not hesitate to call him. Soon Senku was alone in his office with himself and his belongings. Well now, before Jonathan goes back to Korea, the guy decides to spruce up the place a bit. Cutting off a small piece of duct tape, he tapes a piece of paper to one of the walls. On the sheet was a drawing of a type of monster that had escaped from the dungeon in the tragic future that might come if Senku didn't succeed in fixing things. This place will be the first outpost. Soon Jonathan began to report on how things were going. He hired a new company to work on the division and selected 8 more groups to follow. Because of using the method of changing companies after each separation, some employees didn't even realize who they were dealing with. In the end, they were just dealing with paperwork. If you take into account the companies working for tax purposes, You get only 1,000 branches. The cost of orders will surely exceed expectations. Senku needs to send the financial allocation plan himself. In an email, the guy asked Jonathan how things were going with the contracting of Jeffrey K. When the partner replied that the man was willing to work with them, Senku praised him, telling him that there was something else they needed to work on. The young man asks his comrade to think with his head and try to predict and compile the top companies prioritized for acquisition in the future. However, they should stick with CEO Donald Pena for the moment. After reading this message, Jonathan realized what the boy meant. When it comes to prediction, it is obvious that it is much more profitable to work with companies than with anyone else. After all, the information infrastructure is developing at an incredible speed. And if by talking about Donald Pena, Senku means more than just trivial investments to catch this man, right? Jonathan's right. This is not just an investment. Up until the year 2001, it will be very profitable to invest in companies, thanks to the economic phenomenon blossoming at that time, the dot-com bubble. Up until the point where a crisis happens on this ground, investors will be putting huge amounts of money into the most overvalued stocks and startups. When the dot-com bubble eventually bursts, Senku and Jonathan will achieve big market cap gains. But that's only a small part of the plan. The database language they created was ingrained in the jargon of that realm by the 80s of the 20th century. Dungeon, monster, skill, attribute, item, seal, chance box, and so on. The data that was stored in that base had leaked into that system even back then. The incomparably better data program was something created by their headquarters, Guild Data, subordinate to a second benefactor. Revolution was the name of their organization. If Senku had a chance to look at the database built by the Revolution, even the war between the 8 sins and the 8 benefactors would be handled differently. Of course, the guy already knows that the story will change because of his intervention. Naturally, internal development will be affected as well. That is why it is important to minimize the change as much as possible. Senku replies to his partner that they are now prioritizing prediction. They can of course increase Donald's salary and stock option to the highest industrialized values, but he could still decide to leave or just not join, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so the beliefs and calculations have to be as plausible as possible to make this man bite. Without objecting, Jonathan agrees, saying he'll do as Sun said. 8 sins and 8 benefactors. I'll be sure to take all the powers you guys need, the guy promised himself, looking into the monitor. A few days later, the house where Senku lives with her parents. There is a news program on television. The program talks about the meeting of the directors of Islan Financial Holdings Group, which took place on the 21st of this month. Foreign expert company Gold Wish has approved a joint investment and announced the launch of a new company Jonal Investment, with a benefit promised by the government. That's right. Gold Wish is just one of the shady companies that Senku created. To think the state went against its own principles to help with this merger, it's ridiculous. On the other hand, it was obvious, since all foreign investors had been blown away by the wind, they would surely want to hold on to at least some bits and pieces. After getting dressed and walking to the door, the boy informed his mom that he would be back soon. Turning to her son, the woman asks him to bring Chongo to visit sometime. The young man talks about him all the time, but his mom never met him. He's his best friend. Awkwardly avoiding the question, Senku promises to bring Chongo home sometime. The woman then asks the boy if he is still boxing. The young man said that if she was worried about him, he could give it up. Patting her son on the cheek, the mom clarifies that she didn't mean that at all. Even though it's not easy for him, she's proud of how hard the boy works. He can do whatever he wants to do. As she sees her son off, the woman asks if he has enough allowance. As she zips up her sweatshirt, Senku reassures her that everything is fine. However, he still has a lot of work to do. Still, maybe he should really focus on continuing to receive his allowance. Even though he may be the richest teenager in the world, it sure doesn't hurt either way. One of Seoul's main office centers, where Senku rented his personal office, putting on his hood, the guy walks leisurely to the back entrance of the building. Near the elevator, he notices 3 people he doesn't know. As he approaches one of them, the young man notices a name tag on his chest that reads Deeming Bank. This building leased the first floor to Korea's #1 bank, which sponsored the opening of a top online store. The front entrance for visitors and regular employees is at the front, so these people are their management or important bosses. At this point, Senku managed to overhear a rather interesting conversation. One of them started talking about the mysterious manager Kim, who had slipped them to a German international investment bank. As he expected, it was most likely just a prank, wasn't it? However, his colleague said that this was not the case. After checking the information, all their words were confirmed, so the ones who monopolized the fall were the ones who raked in all the money on July 2nd, and they were just a small team. What are they? Gods. If they skimmed all the cream, their accounts after the war must be incredible. There's a fortune in there, and they must have found a use for it. Moreover, no similar activity seems to be forthcoming in Malaysia, the Philippines or Singapore. That leaves only Hong Kong. The man in the blue jacket demands his coworkers close the dislocation for the morning. When one of them decided to object, the man shouted at him, asking how he could not understand such simple things. Those crazy money vacuum cleaners are targeting freaking Hong Kong. As soon as the coworker is done with his preparations, he is obliged to run down to the conference room to let everyone know they need to get rid of those parasites. Are these people really going to catch them? In that case, Senku will have to disappoint them. This situation is not only in Korea, now probably all the banks in the world are in the same situation. Except how are they going to get rid of Senku with Jonathan? They have already split into countless shady companies, and now it is not even possible to track them down. Walking into his partner's office, Jonathan looked around in surprise. Surely this is an office and not a training room. He certainly thought about it, but Senku must be working out like crazy. What do you think? Do you like my form? Jonathan inquired, throwing clumsy punches on the exercise machine. To think of a rank hunter Jonathan moving like that. Senku is incredibly amazed. Then the man saw the katanas standing on a special stand. Does this guy really know how to use them? Interrupting his surprised partner, Senku asked to let him check the documents he had prepared for him. Here is a list of paper companies, corporations set up to perform certain tasks, rather than produce goods and services. After rereading all the documents, Senku noticed that it was as messy as they had hoped it would be. There are about 1,000 or so shady companies here. If they lost this ledger, they wouldn't be able to trace the money back to where it went. Moreover, if they lose it, in that case the inability to trace the direction of their investments would be the least of their problems. Jonathan confirmed it. If anyone else sees those documents, the two of them are going to jail for sure, and most likely life in prison. However, Senku notes that if they manage to sway the judge and jury to their side, it may be possible to dodge taxes for offshore, otherwise forfeiture. But, in case of anything, one can always settle any issue with money. All these two are doing now is creating funds that they can use in the future. This may be considered criminal activity, but it's just a small change. Other than that, everything will remain the same. Making a copy of the documents, Senku asked his partner if he could keep the original. With a relieved exhale, Jonathan agrees, explaining that he's okay with that. His consciousness is only doing what he needs to do right now. Reality for this man is already staggered. Opening the safe nearby, Senku notices that his partner must be very tired, so he should find a room first. From that day forward, the guy forbids Jonathan from using the corporation's credit card. From now on, he will only pay for everything with cash. Just like a criminal, isn't he? No, like a real millionaire. I take it as the same thing now, Jonathan remarked, taking the wad of bills in his hand. After closing the safe, Senku asks his comrade to have a good rest, but when the guy says they will see each other tomorrow, a surprised Jonathan asks why they won't do it in the evening as usual. You could say I'm on vacation, explained the young man, looking at his partner. The dumbfounded Jonathan looked at the boy and didn't immediately realize what that meant, and just mumbled something in surprise, unable to find the words to answer. At that moment, behind Senku's back, he noticed something attached to the wall. There were some pretty detailed drawings of fantasy monsters hanging there. Does Sun really like drawing monsters? He's probably still a kid inside. DP Crump is one of North America's big four investment firms. And this is Emily from Jonathan Investment. The DP Crump employee greeted the woman and examined the documents she brought him. Apparently she was offering him a new type of transaction called a swap. A swap is a trade and financial contract in which two parties exchange cash flows or obligations from two different financial levers. Most swaps involve cash flow based on a notional quantity, like a loan or bond. The man explains that on his part, he has to say that he needs to think things over, as he usually does. However, he does not want to waste this girl's time. The employee explains that it is unlikely that anyone would be willing to accept such an exchange. But at this point, a perplexed Emily asks him to read the contract more carefully. Jonathan Investment is only one of the parties. After saying that, the man looked at her dumbfounded. Covering his mouth with his hand in surprise, he explained that he couldn't make such decisions alone, and so he should call his superiors. Hong Kong raises the interest rate by 100%, and by contract, DP Crump will receive everything below that. Anything above that will go to Jonathan Investment. Holding a contract in his hand, the man in glasses asks Emily how much this exchange will cost. $500 million. The girl replies uncertainly, looking at him. Cocking his head, the man remains silent, trying to contain his laughter. Of course, now he had reason to ridicule the suggestion. Even Emily thinks it's ridiculous. An interest rate increase of 50% is already inadequate, but an increase of 100%, that's nonsense. To claim you'll get a return on values above that is just insane. Jonathan, you crazy bastard. Did he really call his past colleagues at Wolf Corporation to his office to make them look like idiots? Tapping a folder with important papers on the table, the satisfied man in glasses agrees to this exchange. He checked the documents several times, but saw nothing suspicious. $500 million. Haha, they're just offering money for nothing. After shaking his hand, Emily thanked DP Crump and said that Jonathan Investment looked forward to continuing to work with them. However, looking into each other's eyes, they both realized that they would probably never meet again. Preparations for the attack are over. All bets of $500 million have been made. That's the end of the bonds. Now it was up to Jonathan himself. 2 months later, October, when Sanko entered the office, he saw an exhausted Jonathan in front of him, glaring at him. As he approached his doomed partner, the guy asked how much they had already lost. Clutching his head, the man explained that it was almost impossible to count. On exchange dates and sizes are put individually on the depth of the world stock market. Because Jonathan Investment acted cautiously to avoid getting caught, all stock markets in the world, except for the Asian stock market, rose slightly. Even though the partners have prepared for such a situation, watching such a huge loss will not be easy. A dumbfounded Jonathan can't believe that he is once again betting everything he has based only on Sanko's words. An interest rate hike of 300%. Hong Kong will destroy its stock exchange with its own hands. When Sanko said this, it was still a long time before the man could accept what he had just heard. Does he really mean to say that Hong Kong will do something that crazy? Moreover, the guy seems to be absolutely sure of it. Sanko explained that this is their only way to get rid of the speculation. Are they really just going to accept the collapse of their own market? In answering this question, Sanko decided to finally tell us what Hong Kong is aiming for in the first place. Hong Kong and Japan are Asia's financial fortresses. The place they're targeting is probably just Japan. But if they go after that nation, the United States of America will not just let it go. And since Hong Kong realizes this, that leaves only Korea for them. That's right, the country Sanko was born in, Korea. In the history that Sanko knows, at this time Korea had a financial policy that strongly discouraged foreign investment and intervention. Because of this, speculation only multiplied across Southeast Asia to increase fear. And despite the low odds, they hit Hong Kong, where financial chaos was at its peak. All investors, caught off guard, revealed their assets from Korea, and foreign banks, instead of extending corporate loans, demanded their prompt repayment. All this caused Korea to literally implode. Fear turns to chaos when you start to consider that the country is actually on the verge of bankruptcy. But at this moment, suddenly, the speculators resume their policy of slavish long and hard labor. But this time the situation will be a little different. And then came the moment for which Sanko had been preparing for months. Has the sun really made up its mind to do this? Let's go now. To Hong Kong, it's time to give them a beating, the boy said confidently, kneading his hand. After these words, Sang-woo and Jonathan started attacking the Hong Kong stock market, just like the hedge funds did in July, trying to crash the Thai baht. Only this time, their goal is not to destroy the market, but just to shake it. 100 million, 1 billion. They attacked everything: construction, communications, heavy industry, chemical industry. They lowered the stock price of all the industries in Hong Kong at the same time. Everyone except the banks. They decided it was still necessary to leave them room to retreat. Sunshine. Some bastards are following us, Jonathan shouted in panic, looking at the guy. If someone has found them, it's very, very bad. However, it's too early to make any hasty decisions. When Sang-woo reprimanded his partner that the New York office should protect them right now, Jonathan jumped up sharply from his chair, saying he understood. There are only two possible options. Even though he and Jonathan were careful, they were discovered by those speculators attacking Hong Kong, or some savvy stock market participants took advantage of investment blunders. At this point, the partner, holding a cell phone in his hand, announced that he would begin the exchange right away. Good work. Now, if they wait a bit, they can find out who is watching their actions. If those bastards are few in number, they'll settle down quickly. But if it were those speculative investors, they sure wouldn't stop. Whose side are you on now? Defense funds are being pulled. Please just do it. If the Hong Kong stock market crashes because of Sang-woo with Jonathan, history will change too much. This means that events in the future will be impossible to calculate. Suddenly the guy noticed something very comforting. With a relieved exhale, the partners realized that these uninvited guests had finally calmed down. Those nasty bastards almost brought the whole of Asia to disaster. The Hong Kong stock market was about to be destroyed. Relaxing Sang-woo suggests that the man clean everything before the market closes. It was enough to scare the guys. Lucky that no real changes have been made. Now all they have to do is wait for the Hong Kong government to make a decision. Sunshine. Suddenly came Jonathan's hysterical shout as a surprised Sang-woo put on his jacket. Glancing at his partner, the guy noticed he was on his knees, clutching his head. You've made a mistake, Sunshine, Jonathan shouted in panic, looking at the young man with a stunned look. You're wrong, damn it. An employee from DP Crump sits in the jovial company of his coworkers, laughing about a recent offer he received. The man in the purple jacket can't believe that Jonathan Investment has entered into a contract whereby they will only lock in profits after Hong Kong raises interest rates by 100%. How did they come up with that? Then the man asked his coffee-sipping companion how much these underdogs had paid. When they heard the sum of $500 million, their colleagues were very surprised, their mouths hanging open in surprise. The man is actually the general manager of DP Crump and calls him Clive. The dumbfounded comrades sincerely congratulate him, noting that the man has earned $500 million without lifting a finger. Fortune is clearly on his side. Quietly closing his eyes, the general manager remembers those terrible times when he lost a fortune in Thailand. Clive was about to tear at the hair on his head, but it seems that now he's going to get back in full. Isn't that right, Jonathan Investment? How grateful he was to these guys. Suddenly a rather pleasant coincidence happened. The news was broadcasting a live program about Hong Kong. A satisfied Clive wondered what they were going to say now. After a few seconds, the joyful smile was gone from his face. When he heard what they said on TV, he was immediately stunned. Hong Kong raised the interest rate by 400%. Isn't the anchor mistaking the zeros? The three men in business suits sat still for a while, staring doomedly at the television. While they can't even move from shock, their subordinates are frantically calling everyone involved. What the hell are they talking about? It doesn't make any sense. Klein just can't believe this is all happening in front of his eyes. The interest rate below 100% goes to DP Crump, but all values above that go to Jonathan Investment. A 400% interest rate means DP Crump has to pay 4 times $500 million. When did it all go down? Sunshine, you crazy son of a bitch, you did it. Jonathan yelled so hard that his voice was literally heard all over Seoul. It's not just Hong Kong. All the stock markets of the world collapsing overnight. Spot market charts, futures market charts, it's all going down like a stone. And they gain exactly as much as others lose. The Asian financial crisis is only getting worse. A domino effect. The second coming of Black Monday. Hong Kong, the US, Japan stocks are falling everywhere. Europe is no exception. Another jackpot. Now that's their point of reference. In the original story, they called the man overcoming difficulty and Sword Davy overly powerful. But the financial power that Na Sanku has achieved exceeds even them. The very next day, everyone already knew about the stock investor who looks into the future. He's the god of investing, and his name is Jonathan Hunter. When a partner tells him that Forbes magazine is trying to uncover the identity of the second owner of Jonathan Investments by practicing, Sanku asks his partner why the regular list of billionaires would be so interested in them. Jonathan tells him that this magazine has the power to ensure that they have the freedom to do as they please. It seems they've even found an approach already. Do they really think they're the Internal Revenue Service or something? Forbes can't really know who Sanku really is, can they? Putting his hand on the magazine with himself on the cover, Jonathan confirmed the guy's words. If they found out, the whole world would go crazy. All they know is that the mystical John Doe owns 51% of Jonathan Investments. But at the same time, if Forbes knows it, all of Wall Street knows it, doesn't it? Closing his eyes, Jonathan promises that he will protect Sanku so that his identity is not revealed. The best experts have already been hired. Then the guy asked how close Forbes got to them. Given that Jonathan Investments monopolized the fall of Thailand and that they won the party against the world's banks, Forbes magazine calculated that this company was valued at $22 billion. So they took the estate of the enigmatic John Doe for $11.2 billion and Jonathan Hunter for $10.7 billion. They would both be placed at the esteemed 18th and 20th places in the ranking of billionaires. And luckily that's all they know, right? And if you count all the money the partners have in the assets of their shady companies that also made investments, Sanku and Jonathan would rank first and second after each other. A few months later, winter came. A week after the shock in Hong Kong, the Korean government launched the services of the International Monetary Fund 2 weeks earlier than in previous history. The school only the class teacher knew how dangerous this IMF was. To these immature children, it was nothing more than another obscure acronym. Sanku had been like this in the past, hadn't he? Although opening the gate that the monsters were pouring out of wasn't the only problem. As the boy was walking up to his office, he met an employee of Deeming Bank, located on the first floor of the building, who called out to him. The man noticed that the man on the Forbes cover looked a lot like the boy's colleague. The man had seen Jonathan many times over the past few months, but apparently never remembered. Well, looking at Jonathan's scruffy appearance, he would hardly have confidently associated him with the beautiful image on the cover of the magazine. Sanku has no reason to talk to him, and he still has someone to meet. When the boy simply walked past the bank employee, the latter looked at the boy in surprise. "Arrogant bastard," the man said irritably, glaring at him. At this time, a beautiful woman is sitting in the waiting room reading a newspaper. Not realizing where such an enchanting person came from, the other visitors looked back at her in confusion. Among them, only Sanku knew why the girl had come here. "Ms. Jamie," a guy called out to her, stepping closer. Glancing at the young man, the woman wondered if he was the interviewer she was supposed to meet. "I've been expecting you," Ms. Jamie said, smiling sweetly. Walking with the woman to the cafeteria, Sanku gave her his card. This time he's known as the communications manager Ethan. After waving his business card, Jamie decided to inquire if her job application had been rejected or if she should still worry about the competition. However, Ethan pointed out that if it were a regular interview, they wouldn't have given the girl a business class ticket. Therefore, they had already decided to hire her. Moreover, the information about Jamie's illegal activities did not interest them. They looked at her experience at Wilshire Lands. Naturally, the girl's looks were also taken into consideration. This company needed a representative who was a gorgeous Asian woman and a real estate expert. Ethan explained that Jamie needed to understand why he paid so much attention to her beauty. Wilshire Lands hired Jamie as general manager of Asian investments. She was both strategist and cannon fodder at the same time. She needed to turn all the negativity directed at the company into something positive. However, the most important character trait of this woman is that she is willing to engage in illegal operations for her own gain, making a split-second decision. She was tried for malpractice. Jamie was only out on parole because her previous employer, who was also a leading investor and CEO, had misappropriated money. Since August, Na Sang-woo had been looking for someone like this woman. I never heard the name of the company, Jamie suddenly reminded. Jonal, Ethan answered her confidently. Jonal Investments, a company whose CEO will be Ms. Jamie. We've got a breaking news bulletin on the air. For the first time in history, both ruling and opposition parties have been directly affected by regime change. These are challenging times, and the elected president is charged with the responsibility of rebuilding a collapsing economy. This morning's report takes place inside the walls of the Blue House, South Korea's main government building. Today, the country's leader saw Ms. Jamie as part of a business meeting. Teaming up with Jonal Investments, the president announced a massive investment of $15 billion. The president-elect said he looks forward to working together to address the financial crisis. While Sang-woo was watching the newscast on TV, a man entered his hotel room through the back door. The guy immediately congratulated the disguised woman for successfully completing the task. She has become the person this country, no, the whole world of finance wants to meet the most. As she took off her jacket, Jamie asked the young man not to talk about it. She would never be able to get back in once she left the hotel. After saying that, Ethan held out a company card to the woman. Having given this, the guy asks the girl to see to it that the money is always in the set account. She will not be able to get receipts about the transactions in which this card was used. But what was wrong with this strange woman? Sang-woo put all the cards on the table, and she didn't blink an eye. Well, it's for the best. It means the young man has chosen the perfect person. Afterward, the guy asked Jamie how she selects employees for the company. The woman recalled that Ethan had allowed her to go by her own preferences when hiring employees at Jonal Investments. For his part, the guy explained that he could also guarantee Jamie's free use of the inside capital. He would only intervene when he gave her a specific order. The girl tells me that this evening her former coworkers will be moving into the country. She has already completed her negotiations with a real estate consulting company. She also decided to hire people from the accounting firm Samwoo and the law firm Kim and Park. In this country, most problems can be settled with the help of these two firms. Cho Dewin will be the accounting director, and Park Chang-shik will be the legal director. These people can really get things done by utilizing their industry connections. This woman has really good taste. Good choice. All that's left is to find the headquarters. Jamie notes that even this striking building, which is literally right outside his window, is now selling for pennies. Not to mention that market prices continue to fall. However, Ethan recalls that about half of the landlords were knocked out. Not long ago, Jamie had a meeting at the Blue House. It was Na Sang-woo's special order. The goal was to get the real estate market open as soon as possible, and she got results with ease. The real estate market was open 6 months faster than in past history. Hot sale. It sells the remains of a burned-out house for a low price. However, the situation of this country was much worse. Jamie narrated that she saw at the hotel that many of her longtime competitors have also come to Korea. She is, of course, considering real estate. But the woman can't get rid of the thought that investing solely in real estate will prove to be a waste of money. Opportunities like this will never happen again. Standing at the window, the girl asks Ethan if his clients are interested in anything other than real estate. The guy explains that these people are only interested in one thing: profit margins. If it requires it, Jonal Investments shouldn't just focus on real estate. But, as you know, the responsibility for everything rests solely with Jamie. The woman thanks the young man, remarking that if that's the case, the profits will be swell. Right now in this country, even a child can become chairman if he has dollars. Deciding to close the topic, the girl explained that she would take Ethan's recent words as an agreement to extend the policy to companies in other industries as well. that country's company stock would still end up in the hands of foreigners. This country is a great place to start a company. Jamie had suspicions, but the more she learns about the place, the more she likes it. The woman thanks the guy for the opportunity. She promises to definitely justify his trust. Hearing such flattering words, Senko looked at the girl thoughtfully. Noticing the young man's strange look, Jamie remembered something else she wanted to talk about. The woman said that in her free time, she always looked at the special orders that Ethan gave her. Those places and the documents that the guy marked as priorities, in her opinion, deviated significantly from the rate of return he had mentioned. It seemed to her that the most prestigious real estate in Korea was in Seoul. Jamie, I understand your desire to show off your ambition, but that's enough for now. An irritated Senku suddenly interrupted her. I will not interfere in any of Jonal Investment's affairs. I also believe that you will be able to achieve clients because of your abilities. However, you must obey my special orders without question. When Jamie heard such threatening words, she was immediately silent, looking at the angry boy with horror. I think I went a little overboard, the woman muttered quietly, trembling with fear. Nodding, Ethan reassured her, explaining that he understood. Ethan immediately recommended that she choose a member of one of the bank's top 3 lending teams if she wanted to expand her investments to companies in other industries. In addition to all that has been said before, there is another property that Senku has ordered Jamie to purchase. It has nothing to do with finances, nor will it be profitable at all. The money is amazing, but this is more important. And we're talking about those Korean dungeons. Acquiring this mountain and finding the dungeon. All of this took some time. This place looks nothing like it did that day. There was a military facility here at the time. In those days, the government did not give up its position. This mountain and the dungeon were under their control. The martial law that everyone seemed to have forgotten about had been enforced. The awakened ones like Nasenku, who had survived the testing ground, were sent to the reserve. They thought they were enslaved by the government, that they were being used as lab rats. But everything changed when they saw the entrance to the dungeon. The awakened realized they were in a much worse position. While Senku was surveying the surroundings, a car pulled up behind him. Stepping out of the vehicle and closing the door behind him, the man in the green cap remarked in surprise that this place was hard to find. Shaking the guy's hand, the man said hello, introducing himself as Chow Min. Holding out his business card to him, Senku introduced himself as Kim Jeonho of Jonal Investment and asked Min to show him around. After driving around for a few minutes, the man decided to check with Chonho about the exact location of the construction site. Looking out the window, the guy explained that starting from the entrance to the mountain where they met, this whole area belonged to their company. The construction site starts from the entrance, and I wish the builders had managed to get it as rounded as possible. Dazedly holding onto the steering wheel, Min realizes that they've been driving through the mountain for about 20 minutes. Soon the man stopped the vehicle. He explained that it seemed impossible to drive the truck any further. Warden, you do buildings too, right? Chunho asked. Not looking at the surprised man in the green cap, Min immediately told him that he could take on any project of any complexity. Then the fellow told him that in that case the man would have to pave the roads. Turning to look at him, Chana wondered if the chief could do it. We need to start as soon as possible. It might be winter now, but as you could see, the amount of work was quite large. Cut the mountain, pave the roads, and erect the buildings. Because of that damn International Monetary Fund, Min couldn't find a single project to work on, no matter how much he looked. There's no way he's gonna miss this opportunity. Of course he will, he can do it. This is exactly the kind of response Na Sang-woo expected. The man has a great attitude. Walking away back to the truck, the guy adds that when Min will be handing over the facility to him, the guy should keep in mind that the timeline should be as short as possible. Jonal Investment is not about cost, but about speed. Chonho receives bids from other companies as well, but he wants Minu specifically to win this construction project. Scratching the back of his head in surprise, the man wondered why the guy had chosen him. Senku looked at him thoughtfully and then glanced at the pictures on the windshield of the car. Isn't this a difficult time for fathers? From what he heard, Min looked at the guy excitedly, struggling to hold back tears. Wiping his eyes with his hand, the man thanked Chonho. Thank you, Kim said quietly. Honey, came a shout from the house where Na-sanko lives. A drunken father stormed home calling for his favorite son. Taking her husband under her arm, the wife asks Jonal to take a breath first. It's okay. Sanko is here. It's the last day this year. In Sanko's previous life, his father had also come home insanely drunk. That day, he received a death sentence. Or, to be more precise, a voluntary resignation at an early age. But this time, the opposite happened. A satisfied Jonal asks his son if he should change jobs. Sanho, your father is going to be transferred to an insanely rich company. The father shouted happily, grabbing the boy by the shoulders. They're all pompous idiots, but it has to be said that a family needs food on the table, so it wouldn't be wise to turn down an offer like that. That's right, Sanko's father joined his own son's company, and the ironic thing is that the name of the company is his name, Jonal. Yeah, that's something a guy couldn't expect. Sanko entered the financial world precisely because of his father's influence. Jonal gave his son a bank account with $1,000, which was a lot of money for a schoolboy. The father asked the boy to think about what stocks to buy with the money and then discuss it with him. The man asked the boy to talk about such important things more often. Very shortly thereafter came a time when even monkeys could make money on stocks. $1,000 became $1,200, then $1,300. Sanko became a successful high school trader when he still knew nothing. Intoxicated by his beginner's luck, the boy immediately asked for more investment money from his father. This time, however, Jonal did not give him the money for nothing. He lent it to him. Soon the precipitous decline began. The US.com bubbles were constantly bursting. Na-sanko's finances shrank by half, and then by half again. Jonal came to his son, asking what happened to the money he had borrowed. Looking at him menacingly, the man explained that it had to be paid back next week. Yes, the father spoke to the boy in such a way that the kid broke into a cold sweat of fear. All because he had lost his father's precious $2,000. Give it all back, even if I have to take money from my mother. I need that money right now, Jonal said, sitting down next to his crying son. Looking at his father in tears, the doomed Sanho asked how he could do it. The man said he didn't care and advised the kid to save money every time he received his allowance. In any case, Jonal had to take away his son's CD player, phone and computer. However, the lad knew that all this was not even close to enough to repay that incredible debt. Besides, his father decided to tell his mother. He asked her not to argue with his mother, because Sanko was old enough to realize that she could lend money and forgive the boy if he asked nicely. You see, I just wanted you to realize why your father was fired. I also wanted to increase your interest in economics, Jonal explained then, taking the boy by the shoulders. Your current situation is exactly the same as your father's was that day. It was after these words that Na-sanko made up his mind about his career. His goals were clear. The first bank account he received from his father became his talisman. It's been a few days since the new year. The realization of this crazy dungeon project was already well underway. In the end, the construction contract was awarded to the boss of Min. It's good to see him so confident and passionate about the cause. The man had assembled a great team. No wonder he spoke of good connections. While Sanko was thinking about this, behind him he saw strange people watching the construction site. Turning around, the boy realized who they were. They were villagers from the village near the construction site. Sitting in the car, the young man told the driver that he had noticed that this village did not have a town hall, so he was thinking of building one to make the settlement quieter. However, the man in the green cap explained that this was not necessary. His negotiations with the head of the village had been successful without it. For his part, Chonho adds that he is going to completely fence off the mountain and close the entrance. The whole area. Then in that case, not only the villagers, but no one else would be able to enter the mountain. If you don't, there will be a chance that someone might accidentally stumble into the dungeon. Jonal Investment is a foreign company, which may cause the locals to dislike it. Therefore, Jeonho wants boss Min to earn the love and trust of the villagers. Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, The man promised to make the best of it. Exactly. Solving the issue by force was not an option for a big job. It takes a tremendous amount of money to build relationships. During a pleasant tea party, two men discuss amongst themselves a recent attempt at a contract with Pyongdong Construction, but unfortunately, the Civil Affairs Department pressured them and the deal fell through. The man's name is Cho Dewon, and he is the accounting director of Jonal Investments. He wonders from his interlocutor sitting across from him if the man was a colleague of manager Kim. The man noticed that they were quite good at communicating with each other. Jonal Investments legal director Park Chang-shik asked his partner to stop making jokes. President Kim has never been his colleague. The fact is that he is obliged to communicate with him respectfully because of his position. In fact, Park is going to prove himself to him in the next Gangnam-gu election. Dewon notes that the fellow seems to be working pretty hard for this, but he wondered why Park hadn't asked him for help if he was in such a mess. Dewon explained with a chuckle that Dewon couldn't take the strain. However, after calling Park his son-in-law, the man explained that he was mistaken about him. In fact, they are both in the same boat. The colleague agrees, noting that it's true. They are indeed in the same boat. Clinking glasses, they decide to toast the prosperity of their Jonal Investments. But be that as it may, President Kim is the chief. It would be wasteful to leave it as a throwaway card and not use it. President Kim has already brought in a few clients from the West, but it's because of them that Park and Dewon's business is going to go bad. They have nothing to offer. Can they do anything on their own to please Kim and at the same time get closer to these people? Engaging or asking the president himself for advice against his will is risky. It could have irreversible consequences. In the meantime, if we wait a little longer, there may be something to show results to win the trust of President Kim and at the same time satisfy people in the West. By glorifying the name of Jonal Investments, it should be noted that there is far more than one company that can help with this, like Pyongdong Construction, with whom Park recently failed in negotiations. Pondering all of this, Dewon glanced thoughtfully at the dining table. Suddenly he noticed a lone vehicle key lying on the table. The key was engraved with the brand logo of very famous Korean cars. Apart from this company works in many other important industries. Smiling contentedly, the man mused aloud that if things worked out the way he expected, it turns out they already had the right asset. Noticing his coworker's sinister grin, Puck worriedly asked what he was up to. "I'm talking about Daewoo Group," explained Dewon to his partner, looking at him slyly. "They are already rotten to the core. Nothing is impossible for the two directors of Jonal Investments to achieve their goal with their help. Soon the VIPs will be booed in the community. That's when Dewon and Park will give them perks, share the credit with senior manager Kim, and throw money in the face of people from the West. This way they will surprise the president and gain a lot of influence among people from the West and other clients, increasing the visibility of Jonal Investments." Once again raising his glass, Dewon decides to give a rousing speech. "Director Park, let's not stay in office for only 2 years as congressman. We have much bigger plans." A few more days passed. January of the year 1998. Holding a newspaper in his hand, Senku reads the morning news. Many companies went bankrupt due to the effects of high interest rate. The unemployment rate has risen greatly due to the leading companies announcing the reorganization plan. In an effort to open up caused by the severe economic crisis, Japan even cancelled the Japan-Korea Fisheries Agreement. The basic order of things hasn't changed yet. However, there are some minor changes. For example, DP Crump and Deutsche Bank will not enter Korea until the third quarter of this year. Well, the reason for that is obvious. They all lost out to Jonathan Investment. The more they lose, the fiercer they become. In the story that Nasenku knew, they came to this country in the first half of the year to make as much money as they could. Eventually, the worldwide sale came, and it was all provided for. Relaxing in his chair, Senku threw the newspaper on the floor. But what would have happened if they had succeeded? Korea's 3 corporate giants are Daehyun, Daewoo and Ilsing. At that time, Daehyun was much more successful than Ilsing in the domestic market. Outside the country, Daewoo ranked first. Overseas there were over 400 subsidiaries owned by them. It was a gigantic conglomerate with 100,000 employees and twice that many abroad. As she approached Ethan, who was hitting the machine with all his might, Jamie asked him if he knew about the Daewoo Group. Without looking away, The guy said that everyone had heard of them. A warrant is being issued for the chairman of the Daewoo Group this evening, the woman suddenly said. Then the young man stopped abruptly, holding the punching bag with his hand, and looked perplexed at his female coworker. Wiping off the sweat with a towel, Ethan wondered what had happened. He wanted to know everything in detail. The fall of the Daewoo Group was not only caused by the International Monetary Fund crisis 2 years ago. There were problems that led to this sad outcome, and now, like hyenas, they will pounce on Daewoo Group. But how? Jamie then decided to remind the guy that when she became executive director, she hired 2 potentially useful Korean directors, Cho Daewon and Park Chang-sik. Yes, that's right. Now these 2 are busy with political games and bribery. By putting them in these positions, Jamie expected them to be useful. However, all they care about is politics. Often they can be found surrounded by other bureaucrats. They seemed a little suspicious at first, but I guess that's the way it is in this country. However, thanks to them, Jonal Investment alone may have a chance to move Daewoo Group higher on the list and boost their reputation. Ethan reminds the woman that bribery exists in every country. It's just that in North America, they've legalized it through a process called lobbying. No matter how you look at it, the idea's the same. Guy hopes Jamie can accept that in the future. Of course, it's understandable that this country has its own wild mores. After all, the word Chibal exists for a reason. But Ethan asks the woman not to stop and keep going. The clients will be very happy that Jonal Investments will raise the Daewoo Group on the list. 2 directors plan to make a scapegoat for the International Monetary Fund out of Daewoo Group. This company is best suited to be sacrificed to the world. The plan would then be to restore Daewoo Group to its former glory, while promoting the name Jonal Investments to the masses. Ethan realizes that the government won't accept this so easily, which is why Jamie explained that she had already taken the next step. She just got back from a meeting with the finance minister. So that's the real reason for the Daewoo Group's downfall. This woman put the final nail in their coffin. The reason why the likelihood of survival for smart and money-hungry people like her is so high even in times of peace is because they always knew they were allowed to attack someone for their own gain. Their heads were always full of workarounds in the system to come out of them victorious. Well, another reason to remember them. These 3 are really impressive, Jamie and the 2 directors. The woman said that the Daewoo documents held by the current law had already been sent to the court. Ethan was greatly surprised at what he heard. There was no way they could hand over those documents so easily. And what did they want? They require at least $5 billion in additional investment, and for Jonal Investments to take over the entire Daewoo Group, including their liabilities. Of course, with a little more effort, Jonal Investments can probably only take some important sectors. After hearing all these explanations from the girl, Sanku realized that it seems Jamie still needs time to enter the financial world of Korea. In the near future, Korea will hold elections for the ruling party. Sanku already knows that the Democrats will win. In that case, if Jonal Investments is the only one to make a profit after such a collapse, the relationship with the government will be negatively affected. If the company miraculously overcomes the financial crisis, a tax audit will follow. The directors are not just concerned about assets and profits, they are trying to get the company into the top 3 conglomerates in the country. They will not only get the fame, but also all the infrastructure behind the Daewoo Group. Ethan glanced at Jamie and realized that she couldn't personally run a company that large. Having succeeded in buying out the company, she should have thought about hiring a foreign management expert by now, shouldn't she? A guy asks a female employee to find a new executive director for the current Daewoo Group board of directors, preferably not from the family of the first CEO, but someone he trusted. Jamie was surprised to recall that the 2 directors, Cho Daewon and Park Chang-sik, had said the same thing. Did all of this really mean Ethan was letting her continue with this buyout? Pouring himself a cup of coffee, the guy asked the girl to make it not look like Jonal Investments are some second-rate players. They have all the trumps on their hands. The young man then turned sternly to his female coworker. Jamie, you don't need to worry about additional investment funds or the direction the industry is going. A little aggression won't hurt. Do you understand me? Whether it's land, a building, or a company, Don't let the competition take anything away from us. Jonal Investments needs to monopolize the country's crisis. Seoul International Airport. A private jet arrives at the runway. The man who stepped onto the ramp was immediately met by dozens of paparazzi. Look at this. The first visit from the god of investment. It's Jonathan Hunter. As Jonathan said, in the long run, Korea is still worth investing in. Other investors got it wrong. Soon the press conference with Jonathan Investment began. Many newspapers wanted to interview this great man. Finally, the host allowed a reporter from MBS to ask his question. Taking the microphone, the man told today's visitor to this country that he, too, wants to succeed in investments. Where should you invest? The reporter asked him to name at least one company. The other people at the press conference started booing MBS. What kind of ridiculous topic is this? Stop indulging your greed. Excellent question. Jonathan suddenly replied contentedly. If I had to invest in one thing, he said, putting his index finger up. After these words, everyone around him froze, preparing to hear what he was about to say. Invest in fear. The very next day his fame was printed on every newspaper in Korea. The most popular headline at the time was, Investment God Jonathan, invest in fear. Invest in fear. Sanku mocked him, raising his index finger upward with a serious face. As the guy struggles to contain his laughter, his partner tells him to stop. Sanku noticed that Jonathan was very warmly welcomed in Korea. The man himself was surprised by this. He could hardly handle the pressure. To think that they had given him a national reception. Holding out a beer to his companion, Sanku explains that this only shows how hopeless the situation of this country is. But Jonathan adds that they have found a ray of light. The initial payment from the International Monetary Fund has arrived, and the man himself is also downing US dollars here. The guy agrees with his partner. Korea will pay back the IMF quickly, even faster than the original story. But, sunshine, you did all that, didn't you? Jonathan inquired, wiping his lips contentedly with his hand. Swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand, Sanku explained that if his partner was referring to Daewoo, he had no specific plan to help Korea, but it happened on his territory, so it was just a pure accident. Then my partner decided to find out more about Jonal Investments. The guy said that when he gave them such power and the right to freely dispose of capital, they immediately began to use it. Meanwhile, a comrade asked if they were going to take over the entire Daewoo group. Yes, something like that. But Sanku added that the restructuring and management of the subsidiary should begin immediately. However, Jonathan can't understand it. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Isn't it safer to change things gradually and leisurely in such a large company? Why does the son take such a risk? Sanku confidently explained that the dollar will still be the center of mass. Once this country separates from the IMF, it will quickly return to normal. This is just preparation. Jonathan smiled and noted that he seemed to think his country was a jewel. Apparently, his purchase of Daewoo was not just for money. Finishing his whiskey, Sanku explains that if his partner is interested in his true goal, all he has to do is wait for the guy to achieve it. Grinning, the comrade asks Sunny not to be shy about his patriotism. The boy has earned more than enough and therefore can do what he wants. $10 billion. The boy suddenly said, leaving Jonathan puzzled by these words. In addition to the $15 billion I was going to contribute, until we take charge of Daewoo, I'm going to put $25 billion into this country. Realizing the insanity of this plan, a dumbfounded Jonathan looked at the boy sitting next to him. Catching his head, his partner asked the young man to think about it carefully. If they continued like this, they would definitely get 3 life sentences. The man tries to explain to him that they can't blindly believe every plan. If the tax office gives them a good audit, then all the shit will come out. Interrupting him, Sanku explained that he and Jonathan shouldn't be in a hurry right now, but the government couldn't sit still. Expecting a clearer explanation from the boy, Jonathan asked what he was getting at. $25 billion. This is an opportunity to launder them, Sanku said, turning confidently around to his partner. Why the Korean government would choose to help with this is understandable. They need the money now, and there aren't many options. But how they're going to do it? Meanwhile, kneading his neck, the guy explained that it was up to them. The challenge for Jonathan Investments is simply to show them the numbers. Realizing that this might work, Jonathan grinned nervously. Sunshine, When did you become like this? The man inquired, leisurely bringing the bottle of beer to his lips. Naturally, it was a rhetorical question, and Jonathan didn't expect a concrete answer. Taking a small sip, he set the bottle back on the table with a clatter. When did you become like this? You look at the whole nation as a huge company to launder your dirty money. After a ruthless tax audit, the Daewoo Group began corporate training in an attempt to stave off bankruptcy. There was no lavish ceremony to mark the employee's resignation. This is another difference in the new story. The positions of all directors except the managing director have also been retained. A few days later, school. Sanko asks Jamie how things are going with the final buyout of Daewoo Group. The woman said there was competition, but there's no need to worry. In the end, they will remain behind the scenes. In turn, the boy remarked that she was finally settling in pretty well. Laughing, Jamie suggested that the visit to the Blue House had been good for her, but when she decided to strike up a conversation about the distribution of finances, Sanko stopped her, saying they would talk about that later. Stuffing his phone behind his sinus, the guy relaxedly realizes that the Daewoo situation is slowly coming to an end. "Get up," said the young man suddenly. The beaten hooligans lying in front of him immediately rose up, standing meekly in a line. Sanko explained to them that he didn't care what these guys were going to do next. The main thing was to keep them out of his sight. "Got it?" inquired the young man, leaning over to one of them. When the guy let them go, the hooligans, running away from him in tears, shouted that this bastard was definitely connected to the Russian mafia. "How do you explain the fact that he speaks English so well? They're not even useful for training, but they can be very annoying." Sanko scratches the back of his head, trying to think of an excuse to get out of class. Suddenly, the class teacher climbs out of the first floor window, calling out to Sanka. She then gestured for him to come into her office. When the guy came to her class, the girl explained that she just wanted to tell him something. The teacher explained to the young man that the kids don't really hate him. The kid just scares them a little, and she doesn't mean that he has done anything wrong. However, Sanko wasn't listening to what the girl was telling him. Looking at her, the boy realizes that this is all very strange. No matter how much he thought about it, his current class teacher was a completely different person. Sanko didn't pay attention to it as it was a minor change, but now he constantly notices her attitude towards him. After coming to his senses, the kid hears the teacher ask him to try to bond with the other kids to realize that school is a wonderful place. "So promise this to your teacher," the girl pronounced, holding out her little finger to the young man. Something is clearly wrong here. Sanko decides to look into it.
Pet the cat.